Welcome all members to the first meeting of the Committee on Energy and Commerce of the 117th Congress. And we meet today to introduce new members of the committee, to approve committee rules for governing our procedures, and announce the committee and subcommittee chairs and ranking members and subcommittee member assignments. Now, as you know, because of the COVID crisis, today's organizational meeting is being held remotely, and all members will be participating via video conferencing. And as part of our organizational meeting, microphones will be set on mute for purposes of eliminating inadvertent background noise. You'll need to unmute your microphone each time you wish to speak. So just remind you that you have to unmute yourself in order to speak. Additionally, I would ask you to use the raise hand feature of the software platform when you wish to be recognized, including to give an opening statement or to offer an amendment. So I think you all know, you've used that before, that's on there. I mean, for some reason that doesn't work, you could raise your hand, but try to use the that raised hand feature on the software. And after you're recognized to speak, please use the lower hand feature of the software platform so that I know that you no longer want to be recognized. Now, during voice votes, you will need to unmute yourself so that we can hear your response. If you'd like to request a recorded vote, please do so immediately after you respond to the voice vote. During recorded votes, again, you will need to unmute yourself to respond to the clerk once your name is called. The clerk is Chloe. I don't know if you can see her. You probably can. She's one of our new clerks. In responding to the clerk, I ask that instead of just saying aye or no, that you respond with a sentence similar to Pallone from New Jersey votes aye. This will provide additional time for the voting member to be identified and made visible on the platform so the clerk records you properly. Now, I'm going to start by recognizing myself for 5 minutes for opening remarks. I want to thank all of you for being here today and look forward to collectively working together to address the unprecedented challenges that our nation faces. Sadly, this country is mourning the loss of more than 400,000 Americans to COVID-19, and millions of Americans have lost their jobs or have had their hours reduced as a result of the ongoing pandemic. The committee's top priority, obviously, is to push policies to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, provide critical assistance to struggling families, and rebuild our economy. And bringing an end to the pandemic so people can begin to safely return to regular patterns of life is clearly our most important precedents. And we have developed life-saving vaccines, as you know, in record-setting time, but innovation without effective implementation is not very helpful. I have been very critical of the Trump administration because I think that they failed to get vaccines in people's arms quickly enough. And I do think that needs to be fixed fast, and correcting our course on vaccine distribution is going to be a key focus for the committee. Last week, President Biden took, I consider, decisive action to contain and ultimately bring an end to the pandemic. He took executive actions that will improve equitable vaccine distribution, expand access to testing, and effectively utilize the Defense Production Act to ensure continued access to medical supplies and personal protective equipment necessary for testing and vaccination. And these efforts by President Biden put in place, I believe, a strong federal strategy, which I think is critical to bringing an end to the virus. But in addition, in the coming months, we will push an aggressive agenda to make sure that the country has the resources to crush this pandemic, make healthcare and prescription drugs more affordable, rebuild and modernize our nation's infrastructure, combat climate change, and protect consumers. The committee will also continue to conduct robust oversight as we work to provide relief. I think it's crucial that we examine how to rebuild and restore essential functions of key agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Environmental Protection Agency. And I've said many times before, and I believe in more fervently now, that our committee's jurisdiction lies at the very heart and center of some of our nation's most significant legislative and policy areas. The policies we debate and the actions we take in this committee are important to protecting and improving the lives of all Americans, such as ensuring that Americans have access to affordable health care, clean air, safe drinking water, and broadband communications and the internet. And you know, the committee, as Cathy knows, this committee has a strong bipartisan tradition, and I have every expectation that tradition is going to continue over the next 2 years. during these unprecedented times, we were able to come together in the last Congress to enact bipartisan policies that are making a difference in people's lives. And I just wanted to mention it because I'm very proud. The committee worked on 4 bipartisan COVID-19 bills, all of which have been critical to fighting the virus that became law. Some of our big accomplishments that became law, if I could just mention them briefly, are ending surprise medical billing, providing long-term extensions of expiring health programs, including community health centers, phasing down the production and consumption of harmful hydrofluorocarbons, mandating for the first time the repair of methane leaks in gas pipelines, reducing and blocking annoying robocalls, improving the accuracy of America's broadband maps, and securing America's wireless future, and protecting consumers from scammers and dangerous products. And with all the hullabaloo about and the fights that took place in the last Congress, you know, because we had a divided government in Washington, we still were able to accomplish all these things, getting them passed in the Senate and signed by President Trump. So as a committee, we're all very proud of our record of bipartisan accomplishments, and I'm hopeful that that's going to continue this Congress. So let me now officially welcome our new ranking member, Cathy McMorris Rodgers. Congratulate her on making history as the first woman to become ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee. And over the past 6 years, I've had a lot of bipartisan ease working with her predecessors, Fred Upton, who's still with us, and then with Greg Walden, who has retired. But I think that she's going to carry on the tradition of Fred and Greg, which is a great accomplishment, a great tradition of accomplishing things together. Last month, because I was talking about history before we opened the meeting, last month we celebrated the 225th birthday of the committee. It's the oldest continuous committee in the House. I don't know if everyone knows that, but I'm going to tell you. And also, I don't think there's any debate. It's the best committee in the House and in the Congress, in my opinion. And that's because we come together to solve big problems. So let me start, Cathy, by welcoming the 5 new Democratic members. Kathleen Rice represents New York's 4th Congressional District, which covers parts of Nassau County. A lot of similarities with my district. Kathleen's district was devastated by Superstorm Sandy, and she focused on combating climate change and creating good jobs, particularly investing in resilient infrastructure to prepare for the future. Did we lose everybody? All right, you're all coming back. And then Kathleen, a wave. Where is she? Okay. Angie Craig, another new member, has been an advocate for expanding healthcare on behalf of her constituents in Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District. She's a leader in finding solutions to lowering the cost of healthcare and strengthening the Affordable Care Act. Have a wave there from Angie. Okay. Then we have Dr. Kim Schreier, who represents Washington's 8th Congressional District. I guess a neighbor to you, Cathy. Prior to coming to Congress, Dr. Schreier was a pediatrician, helping countless families and children. Throughout her career, Dr. Schreier has worked on issues that improve the lives, health, and well-being of children and families. And then we have Lori Trahan, who represents Massachusetts' 3rd Congressional District. She's the successor to Joe Kennedy, as many of you know. She has worked to combat the opioid epidemic that faces so many of our constituents, and she has also fought tirelessly to protect our environment. And finally, the 5th is, and certainly not least, is Lizzie Fletcher, who represents the greater Houston area as part of Texas's 7th Congressional District. Lizzie has been committed to helping her state and district navigate the COVID-19 pandemic and in getting resources to her constituents. And she's also been a leader in combating the use of toxic PFAS chemicals. So I congratulate all 5 of our new Democratic members. Please welcome them. And now I will turn it over to our committee's new ranking member, Ms. Rodgers, for 5 minutes for an opening, and then beyond that to introduce the new Republican members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's great to see everybody, and congratulations to the new members on the best committee on Capitol Hill. I want to start by thanking you, Mr. Chairman, for organizing today's meeting. Certainly, it's my first as ranking Republican for the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And I completely agree, this is the best, most influential committee in Congress. And I'm honored to serve here especially to advance priorities to improve the lives of those that I serve in Eastern Washington. I began this new Congress with the same mission: to restore trust and confidence in representative government. Trust is key. It's where the magic happens. It's the foundation to everything that we do. And each one of us here has the honor of representing around 750,000 people. Especially as we work for their priorities on this committee, they trust us with their hopes and dreams. Their hope to provide for their families, their dreams for a better life, to take a risk and open a new business, to discover the next cure or breakthrough, to create something to improve the world around them, and much more. And this is what makes energy and commerce uniquely American. As you already highlighted, this is the oldest committee in Congress. It was here at the beginning for our very first hopes and dreams in the promise of America. That work continues by each one of us, the majority and the minority, and everyone from subcommittee leaders to our new members. We were all duly elected to serve in this greatest experiment in self-governance that the world has ever known. For more than 225 years, the committee has taken on the most difficult challenges of the day. It's done the hard work of legislating, plowing the hard ground to do what is right for America to win the future. For hope and healing in our country today, the rich history of this committee must continue. It's what needs to happen for liberty and unity for this generation. When we see people on the right and the left going to the streets to protest, and we see destruction and violence, this is a warning. People are losing trust and confidence in their duly elected representatives who are supposed to be a voice for the people. There is this sense that no one's listening. We're all guilty of pointing fingers, blaming others, labeling the other side as the enemy, and going to Twitter and cable news for fleeting hits of outrage. The most difficult challenges of our day is this sense of brokenness. And like all our vulnerabilities, this pandemic has made it worse. Broken systems are failing Americans today. Institutions that once held the public's trust, like Congress, our schools, newspapers, and universities, are all broken. There are broken lives and families too, with record levels of anxiety, addiction, divorce, and suicides. In the midst of all of this, we can't let this committee become broken too. The challenges are too great for the culture of contempt and shame to break us or stop us from doing the people's work. I know that we just came out of a long, difficult, and close election. With narrow majorities, there's going to be a temptation to retreat to our corners, hear only what we want to hear, and define our own truths to force things through. It's going to be a lot harder to resist this, but I challenge this committee, the majority and the minority, to lead a new era. We will not always agree on policy positions, but we can always seek understanding in legislating to get to yes. We can appeal to the greater angels among us, the better angels among us, and give each other the benefit of the doubt. Listen and lead with the values that unite us for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. That's leadership, and that's what it's going to take to get lasting results. And it's how we can chart a new course to restore hope and bring healing to those we were duly elected to serve. One thing that should bring us all together is the constant attacks on this committee's jurisdiction. Whether it's cybersecurity, spectrum, or healthcare, other committees are constantly attempting to take away our jurisdiction, and we need to work together to push back against these attempts. Mr. Chairman, I look forward to working with you and all the members on this great committee ahead. My prayer is that the Lord God Almighty will help us in this hour of our great need, and that we will have tender and responsive hearts to the Lord God and to each other and to all Americans. Now I have the honor of introducing our 8 new members. They bring immense value to our team, and we're excited to all join in welcoming them to the best committee here on Capitol Hill, Energy and Commerce. First, I would like to introduce Gary Palmer. Congressman Gary, there he is. He also serves as the chair of our policy committee. He brings strong policy expertise. He also will be quick to remind you that he played on Alabama's football team. He walked on even though he had never played football before. So we always have to acknowledge the Crimson Tide, and they did have the national championship this year. I'm not sure what happened to Clemson. You can ask Jeff Duncan about that. Next, we have Congressman Neil Dunn. It's hard to find everybody. Anyway, wave to us, Dr. Dunn. There you are. He's a surgeon, a veteran of the U.S. Army. He's a member of the Doctors Caucus, and he's going to be a valued healthcare voice for us. And thank you for your service, Dr. Dunn. Please welcome Congressman John Curtis from Utah's 3rd District. He represents the youngest district in the country with an average of 26 years old. He's the former mayor of Provo City, and he led a very tech-forward agenda to build trust in local government. Now, I'd like to recognize Congressman Debbie Lesko from Arizona's 8th District. Debbie is a proven leader. Before Congress, she served in the state legislature for 9 years. She always has her eye on the people's house. Even in college, she served as a House Fellow. There's Debbie. Please welcome Congressman Greg Pence. Greg Pence from Indiana's 6th District. Greg served in the Marine Corps, ran a small business in Indiana. His family has a long history of service to the Hoosiers and our country. We're grateful to have Greg in the People's House. Next, Congressman Dan Crenshaw from Texas's 2nd Congressional District. Congressman Crenshaw is a retired lieutenant commander and a former Navy SEAL. I'm told he'll also jump out of a plane at the request of anyone on the committee. There you go. Please welcome Congressman John Joyce. He's from Pennsylvania's 13th District. He's also a member of the Doctors Caucus. During his residency, he was chief resident at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Dr. Joyce has also worked with the Navy at the Portsmouth Naval Hospital in Virginia during Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome Congressman Kelly Armstrong from North Dakota. Congressman Armstrong is an attorney and has served his community in many ways in the state Senate, a volunteer fireman, a youth sports coach. He's a strong voice for those that he serves in North Dakota. So again, thank you and welcome all new members, Republicans and Democrats. As we have a rich history of energy and commerce, I look forward to working with all of you as to what we can achieve together.
Thank you, Cathy. And welcome to all the new members, Republican and Democrat. I love what our ranking member said about jurisdiction, because Fred Upton knows that we spent a lot of time as chair and ranking members, Greg as well, in fighting off the jurisdiction of other committees. And I don't know if a lot of you know, but I think sometimes between the chair and the ranking member, we probably spend at least 25–30% of our time fighting off jurisdictional battles. It's an unfortunate reality, but it's true. And I appreciate Cathy mentioning it. So now any member who would like to be recognized to make an opening statement for 1 minute can do so. We'll just go back and forth between the two parties. So please use that raise hand function to be recognized and then unmute before you speak. Which members would like to be recognized? I'd like to go in seniority, but I'm not sure that I can. All right, I can't. From what I see, I have Jan's hand is up and also Dan and Viget. So let's start with, who's that? Jan first, or did Anna have her hand? Oh, Anna has her hand up. Okay, so first is Anna Eshu, the chair of our health subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to you and congratulations to our new ranking member and for her beautiful words today. I think each word had a great deal of meaning to it. And to all of our new members, both sides of the aisle, welcome to the committee. And I couldn't mean that more. We have a very full agenda because our country has tremendous needs. I also want to congratulate the new ranking members and subcommittee members that are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. At Energy and Commerce, we really stick to regular order in terms of subcommittees doing the work and then advancing the legislation to the full committee. So all of our work on the subcommittees, particularly obviously because I chair health, we will continue honoring that. And the importance of that is that each member's work and ideas really count. They really count. So we have a full agenda. We want to meet the challenges that are there. We have the capacity in our country to meet these challenges. But at all the subcommittees, the original tables where these policies are set, we've got to roll up our sleeves and really produce for the American people. So God bless each one of you. I look forward to working together. And I couldn't mean that more. And for the new members of the committee, we're always refreshed by the new members and their ideas, their experience, what they bring to the committee. And you're all high value in my book. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Anna. And I'm trying to get a handle on whose hand is raised, but I don't see any Republican. Oh, Bob Latta. Well, let me ask you, Fred, did you want to say anything, Fred Upton? No? Okay, then I'm going to go to Bob Latta. Bob?
Well, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'd just like to welcome all the new members to the committee. And I'd just like to say this, is that it is the greatest committee in Congress. But one of the things I've always said is what makes it so great is when you sit up there on that dais and you see the witnesses and the entrepreneurs and the innovators that come in, we're always looking over the horizon 5 to 10 years. And so it's making sure we get our legislation right and then which turn into regulations. Because you talk to these people, and especially when I know that we were working on the autonomous vehicle legislation, I ask everyone the same question. You know, after 5 years, are they where they thought they would be? And they all said, no, we're much farther ahead. So that's why it's just when we look at our legislation that we do, how important it is to make sure we get it right. So I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and our ranker, Cathy. Thanks very much. And with all of our new members and all of our returning members, but looking to see everybody in person. So thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Bob. I see Bobby Rush's hand is up. Bobby, recognized.
Wait a second.
Bobby,
you need to unmute, Bobby. You're on mute.
you may have to unmute.
Can't hear you, Bob.
There he is. Now he can't hear us. Bob, you have to unmute.
I am unmuted. I think we are
You're good now.
the same place at the same time. Mr. Chairman, I want to welcome all the new members and the returning members also. And I want the new members to really understand, in a way of speaking, I think that you have, by selecting this member, this committee, by being a member of this committee, you have really hit the proverbial jackpot. There's no committee in Congress where you will have the breadth of issues, the engagement of other smart members, and the capacity and the authority and power to make such an impact in the American way of life on our democratic system. The issues that you will be considering, that you will be debating, that you will be wrestling with, are the issues that will make a decided impact on the lives of your constituents and on constituents around our nation, and indeed, Mr. Chairman, I might add, around the world. So I invite you all to roll up your sleeves, put all that you have into this. And this is a committee that has a long legacy of individuals who have really made significant and lasting contributions to our nation. And foremost among them is Mr. John, Chairman, former Chairman, our late eminent Chairman, Chairman Emeritus John Dingell, whose name is on the committee, the main committee room. And not only is his name on the main committee room, but his name is on significant pieces of legislation that really have over the decades made Americans' life much better. He's always had his eye out for those who are the least of these, and certainly Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all those has John Dingell's imprimatur on it. So you have, you are a part of a committee and that has a history, accomplishments, that has indeed has a lot of jurisdiction. And I just want to remind each and every one of us that our jurisdiction is sacrosanct. We will fight to maintain our established jurisdiction. And we also, while we're fighting to maintain our established jurisdiction, we want to try to grab as much jurisdiction from other committees as possible. If they don't have the same kind of attitude about their jurisdiction, if they don't protect their jurisdiction, then we certainly will try to bring that jurisdiction under the auspices of our committee. So Debbie, I really look forward to working with you, and I think that you and Frank will be a perfect team to lead our committee in the future. With that, Mr. Chairman, I humbly yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Bobby, and thanks for all the accolades. Now, I'm going to just go through the Republicans, because I don't see any of these names up, but Cathy, or if any of you want to speak, tell me. I'm just going to run through because I don't see them up. I don't see Mike Burgess. I don't see Steve Scalise, our whip. I don't see Brett Guthrie's hand up. Dave McKinley, Adam Kinzinger, Morgan Griffith, Gus Bilirakis, Bill Johnson, Billy Long, Dr. Bouchon, Mark Wayne, no, Richard Hudson, Tim Wahlberg, Buddy Carter, I didn't see up, Jeff Duncan, Gary Palmer, Neil Dunn, John Curtis, Debbie, no, Greg Pence, Dan Crenshaw. That's, your hand is not up right now.
No,
John,
I'm just saying we're ready to go to work, Mr. Chairman.
all right, I guess there's nobody. All right, so let's go back to the Democratic side. There were a few hands up. Diana DeGette, recognized for 1 minute.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very, very brief. I just want to say two things. Obviously, like everyone, I welcome all the new members. When I came on this committee in 1997, there were 3 women on the committee: Anna Eshoo, Karen McCarthy, and me. And now we have our first woman as the ranking member. So congratulations, Cathy. And all of the Democrats, the new members, are women. So watch out, guys, we're taking over. The second thing I'm going to tell you is that as the chair of the Oversight Subcommittee, I echo all of this about how everybody's trying to steal our jurisdiction. I've already talked to the new chair, Morgan Griffith. The O&I subcommittee, you wouldn't know it, but we have a long bipartisan tradition of investigations, and we are going to aggressively continue that this year, working together as much as we can. With that, Mr. Chairman, under 1 minute, I yield back.
Thank you, Diana. And next, I can't believe he's actually going to say something because Mike Doyle, you will learn, is always trying to tell us to do everything quickly and not speak. But Mr. Doyle has asked to, is now recognized for 1 minute.
I'll be less than 15 seconds, Frank, but I want to congratulate Cathy on her ranking membership. Look forward to working with you, Cathy. And my good friend Bob Latta, look forward to working with you on communications and technology. Welcome to all the new members. I yield back.
Thank you, Mike. And next we have Jan Schakowsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to associate myself with all the good feelings that I hear from all of our colleagues and look forward to addressing the issues that are really plaguing Americans. We have an opportunity to do so much good, and I look forward to that. I think I know that I am the only one, certainly in the last Congress, who worked with Cathy Rodgers as the ranking member of the Consumer Protection and Commerce Subcommittee. So we worked together, and I put my hand up right away because I wanted to say that it's kind of a foreshadowing of how we are able to work together. We certainly didn't necessarily agree on everything, but we were never disagreeable. She is never disagreeable, and we were able to get a lot of things done. So congratulations to you, Cathy. I know as now the ranking member of the full committee, we're going to be able to get a lot of things done. So thank you so very much to all, and congratulations to all the new members. I love that we're all saying this is the most important, and it is the most comprehensive committee in the Congress. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. And then last but not least is our friend from Vermont, Peter Welch.
Hey, thank you. Congratulations, Frank. Congratulations, Cathy. You know, one of the exciting opportunities for us with a 50-50 split, really pretty much down the line in the House and in the Senate. And with everybody wanting to put a lot of the incredible January events behind us, is to get concrete and specific about things that, if we do them, are going to be helpful for everybody in who we represent. I mean, telehealth, that's good for everyone. Broadband is good for everyone. Lower cost of healthcare is good for everyone. Wrestling with some of the issues on telecommunications and the internet is good for everyone. So my hope is that we'll be specific and concrete about the steps we want to take to benefit our constituents, and stay away from using the committee as a forum for some of the bigger global debates that we have on both sides of the aisle. So I'm really looking forward to continuing service on this committee with all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, we're going to move on to the rules, but if you had your hand up and you spoke, try to lower it on the on the internet there, so that I don't think you want to speak again, because some of you still have your hand up. So if you could take that down, that would be helpful, because I want to know who I should recognize. All right, so now we're going to adoption of the resolution to establish the committee rules for the 117th Congress. Pursuant to Clause 2A of House Rule 11, the first order of business is the adoption of the committee's rules of procedure for the 117th Congress. A copy of the resolution to establish these proposed rules has been distributed to each committee member in advance, so I hope that you have it. Not that it's interesting to read, but hopefully you have it. And I have the resolution at the desk, and I would ask the clerk to report the resolution.
A resolution offered by Mr. Pallone, be it resolved by the Committee on Energy and Commerce that the rules for the committee for the 117th Congress shall be.
And without objection, Madam Clerk, the reading of the resolution is dispensed with, and the chair recognizes himself briefly for 5 minutes. Thank you, Chloe. I asked my staff back in December, just as I did at the start of the last Congress, to look critically at our committee rules and to ask the minority staff to do the same. And since that time, our respective staffs have been regularly communicating about the committee rules package. My staff advised me that neither staff found any areas in our rules that were not functioning well or as they were intended, nor did they find any of our rules were causing misunderstandings or non-constructive disagreements. And beyond those assurances, we also saw how effective and resilient our standing committee rules could be stretched and adapted to meet with the temporary House rules authorizing committees to conduct remote proceedings. So despite considerable pressures, the committee was highly productive throughout the last Congress, as I mentioned, whether it met remotely or in person as a committee. And in the 116th Congress, our committee convened close to 130 hearings. That's pretty amazing, 130 hearings, including 12 hearings relating to COVID-19 and the government's response to the pandemic. And during my opening comments, I highlighted a lot of the committee's key accomplishments in the last Congress, and that record inspires me to believe that our committee can continue to deliver for the American people through—
Reclaim post roll.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, guys, what are you doing, Fred?
No, it auto went back to me. Thank you so much.
Oh, all right. Can we, everybody, mute yourselves
Okay.
if you're not
Bye.
speaking?
And in April, we have TAC looking to find out.
I don't know what that is. All right, I'm sorry. Anyway, because of our record in the last Congress, I think that we can continue to work through fully remote hearings and markups for the duration of any covered periods that the Speaker of the House deems are necessary. So while the emergency continues, we're going to continue to have hearings and markups remotely as we are today. So the only specific change to the rules is technical in nature. And before recognizing members who wish to speak on the rules, I want to briefly describe these rule changes, which I consider technical, but you see what you think for yourselves, okay? The one flows from the passage of House Resolution 8 on January 4th, which served as the legislative vehicle for amendments to the House rules for the 117th. And that change to our committee rules package comes from changes that were made to clause 4A1B of House Rule 10 to strike the word chairman wherever it appears in the House rules and to insert the word chair in its place in an effort to make the rules of the chamber more gender inclusive. So it goes from chairman to chair. The intention behind that change is to honor all gender identities by changing pronouns and familiar relationships in the House rules to be gender neutral. And so we've updated the language of our rules package to meet that standard. I mean, I guess that's really the only thing that I would mention. Everything else is so technical in nature. I don't see anything else that I really need to talk about. But I know that there were some concerns expressed by the ranking member, and so I would like to recognize Ms. Rodgers now to discuss those, if you will, Cathy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some questions for you about our committee rules and their application to the hearing scheduled for next week.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The majority has already announced 2 hearings for next week, next Tuesday and next Wednesday. But as the parliamentarian has advised, proper notice cannot technically be provided before the Congress, the committee organizes. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, we consulted. I have my phone off, Cathy. Let me get rid of that. We consulted with the parliamentarian once we identified that the delay in House passage of the resolutions electing members limited our ability to meet the 7-day notice requirement for the hearings of the subcommittee next Tuesday and next Wednesday. In other words, the House did not adopt the officially make us members of this committee on either side until this morning, okay? So we had already been planning the subcommittee hearings when we learned that this was an issue and that the members hadn't officially been put on the committee by the House. So we basically, what the parliamentarian told us is that although official notice wouldn't be provided officially within 7 days, they recommended that the committee provide unofficial notice in keeping with the spirit of the rules and the normal practice. So following that recommendation from the parliamentarian, we circulated announcements on Tuesday and Wednesday for the hearings next Tuesday and Wednesday. In other words, giving informal notice of 7 days. And then we're going to circulate the official notice for next Tuesday and next Wednesday's hearings later today. But as you know, we had already been planning these hearings by the time we learned of this problem. And so we alerted the Republican staff 2 weeks ago before the hearing commenced that we were going to do these hearings, and we have the majority and the minority witnesses, and they're COVID related. And so I asked Ms. Rodgers if we could proceed, by doing the notice informally, so that we wouldn't have to postpone these very valuable hearings on COVID that we already set up, and that we're afraid we maybe not get the witnesses if we can't have it next Wednesday, next Tuesday and Wednesday. But let me yield back to you, Ms. Rodgers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do recognize that there's a good clause exception provided in the rules. The rules that we adopt today do require hearings to be noticed a week in advance. And specifically, if you look at Committee Rule 3A, it requires, quote, the date, time, place, and subject matter of any hearing of the committee to be announced at least 1 week in advance of the hearing. So since today is Thursday, and we're already within that 1 week window for both the Tuesday hearing and the Wednesday hearing, that means that the notices for both these hearings are deficient, right? Correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Can everybody mute themselves, please, so we can hear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ms. Rodgers, yield to you.
So we've talked about the best way to proceed on this matter. I don't want the committee to get into the habit of using this good clause exception. Can you commit that this will not become the regular practice at the committee?
Yes, as I have said, and I think Ms. Eshu said earlier, regular order is important, and that includes properly noticing all committee meetings. That has been the practice of the Energy and Commerce Committee in the past, and it will continue to be our practice. You mentioned the good cause exception to the 7-day notice requirement that we can obviously invoke, but that really is intended to deal with the technical error because of what happened here with the members not being appointed today, and I don't want this good cause exception to be, and I will not allow it to become a regular practice at the Energy and Commerce Committee. So I recognize, as you do, that there is a good cause exception. We are going to use it today, but that will not become our regular practice. We will notice everything within the 7 days requirements. This will be a rare exception.
Very good. And I greatly appreciate you making that clear for us as we proceed. Certainly responding to COVID and the COVID pandemic remains top priority for all of us on this committee, and we don't want to stand in the way of moving forward. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to ask some questions regarding subpoenas and the committee's oversight authority.
Yes, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. The committee rules authorize the chairman to issue subpoenas after or to the extent practical consultations 72 hours in advance of issuance between the Republican leader of the committee and the chairman. And written notice must be provided to committee members no later than 1 week from the date of issuance. The subpoena power obviously is one of Congress's most important tools for collecting information and needs to legislate effectively. Experience shows the mere threat of a subpoena is often sufficient to get Congress the information that it needs. However, as with all governmental authorities, the subpoena power should be used thoughtfully to avoid abuse. The current committee rule was written in the 114th Congress. Then, Chairman Fred Upton used the authority 5 times during that Congress. Mr. Walden used the authority just once during the entire 115th Congress. In each case, the subpoena was either requested by the witness, a so-called friendly subpoena, or authorized only after extensive attempts to gather information from the witness and being denied that said information. As far as we are aware, Mr. Chairman, you did not use this authority during the last Congress. You were reasonable and responsible in exercising this authority. I'm hopeful this practice continues. So my question, Mr. Chairman, will you commit to taking reasonable steps before resorting to subpoena authority, such as building a committee record on the matter by requesting voluntary briefings, interviews, and information requests, and negotiating with objects of the subpoena so that it can be tailored to our committee's specific needs?
The simple answer is yes, but let me explain that when I became chairman, I made a commitment to running the committee by regular order to the greatest extent possible. That includes the committee utilizing all avenues available to the committee for obtaining information from entities and testimony from witnesses voluntarily before using the committee's subpoena authority. As the record reflects from last Congress, this committee exclusively used such avenues to complete the work of the committee. I did not issue or authorize a single subpoena, as the ranking member said. And while I plan to continue this approach to the use of the committee's subpoena authority, I recognize that there may come a time during the Congress when the use of subpoena authority is warranted. In those instances, I intend to follow the rules set forth in our committee rules with respect to subpoenas. So the answer is yes. We will do whatever we can to avoid issuing subpoenas. And as you said, we didn't actually do it at all in the last Congress. So thank you.
Thank you. We would ask if you would be willing to commit to taking reasonable steps, including face-to-face conversation, a phone call, or an email to consult with me as the ranking member at least 72 hours before issuing a subpoena.
Yes.
And then provide the required notice to members after issuing a subpoena.
Yes, of course.
Okay, I thank you. I think these exchanges are good to get on the record, and it's important for the functioning of the committee when things do get heated, and we have these understandings going forward for both the majority and the minority. So with that, Mr. Chairman, the Republicans are prepared to support the rules package, and I yield back.
Well, thank you. Now, let me just mention a few other things that we discussed with the ranking member before we adopt the rules package. With regard to the chairman's authority to call and convene meetings and markups, I will try to the maximum practical extent to avoid scheduling committee proceedings on days and at times that would conflict with Democratic caucus meetings, Republican conference meetings, other leadership functions, and other committee events. And I'll also try to the maximum extent possible to respect members in disparate time zones when scheduling our committee proceedings. In relation to the chairman's authority to postpone or roll votes, as most of you know, that particular rule was adopted by Republicans when the current minority led the House in the 115th Congress. And as I pointed out at the committee organizational meeting for the 116th Congress, it's not my goal or our goal as the majority party for me to exercise my postponement authority imprudently or unfairly. Instead, I will use it to flexibly manage and conduct committee business efficiently and effectively. And I assured the ranking member, just as I assured Greg Walden before her, that I will work closely with her in determining a time to resume proceedings on a postponed matter and to exercise my authority judiciously and fairly. Now, this is probably a good time for me to point out that it's my intention as the chair to continue convening all committee proceedings and events on a virtual and fully remote basis. I think I already said that, but let me repeat it. I plan to continue this way for as long as the House Speaker deems it necessary and prudent for the House committees to meet, take evidence, hold hearings, and consider legislation remotely pursuant to and for the duration of the applicable and temporary covered period requirements for committees. This is essentially the emergency that the Speaker declared during COVID. We'll also continue the longstanding committee tradition that permits members participation at subcommittee hearings, even if they are not members of that subcommittee. This has often been raised by Ms. Eshu. What the protocol allows is for non-members of a particular subcommittee to attend that subcommittee's hearings. On securing unanimous consent, those non-members are able to participate in the hearings by asking questions, but only after all members of the subcommittee have been recognized to ask their questions. In addition, as provided for in the House rules, all members of the House are entitled to non-participatory attendance at committee and subcommittee hearings which means that non-committee members may attend our hearings, but they can't participate in our hearings through recognition to speak or by asking questions. I think most of you know that. And the last procedure-related point I would raise before, again, yielding to Ms. Rodgers, deals with granting preference consideration to certain amendments. Though it has not been formalized as a committee rule per se, another tradition that I extend as chair to accord is to accord priority recognition at markups of bipartisan amendments. That means if the amendment is bipartisan, sponsored by members on both sides, that practice, puts those amendments as a priority when we have markups. And that's been in effect for the past 6 Congresses, remains an effective incentive to members to work together across the aisle. And those sorts of working relationships should be promoted as often as possible using parliamentary avenues. So we can continue our practice of priority consideration for amendments received 2 hours in advance, with one exception specific to remote markups only. For remote markups, I'm using the permissive authority granted by the Remote Committee Proceeding Regulations pursuant to House Resolution 8 to grant priority recognition to amendments that have been filed with the committee at least 4 hours prior to the markup. So because they're remote, if you do it at least 4 hours prior, you'll get priority. This practice will be limited to remote and hybrid markups only. We are adopting this practice for remote and hybrid markups to encourage members to submit amendments as soon as possible, and that provides other members more time to remotely consult with their staff and committee staff about such amendments. And without that, I would now ask, I know the ranking member has already spoken, unless she wants to speak, and Ben, does any other member wish to be recognized to discuss the committee rules, starting with our ranking member or anyone else at this point? Ms. Anna is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure that something is clarified. And thank you for looking into it and working with our ranking member. On the issue of members that don't belong to a subcommittee and being extended the legislative courtesy of attending a subcommittee meeting, I heard you say that they can't ask questions or make a statement, but I don't think that's accurate. Maybe I misunderstood or didn't hear it correctly.
What I was saying, and I'm not going to repeat it, what I said, but let me just explain it as best I can. If you're a member of the full committee, but you're not a member of the subcommittee, you can attend the subcommittee hearings and you can ask questions, but you have to go after all the members of the subcommittee have asked.
Okay, good.
If you're not a member of the committee at all, right?
Right.
Member Energy and Commerce Committee, any member of Congress can come and listen, can sit there and listen. They just can't ask questions.
Okay, I yield back. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Anna. All right. Anyone else who wants to discuss the rules? I don't see anybody.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Cathy here.
Yes.
I'll just say I really appreciate you moving forward with the SU protocol. I know that there's many members on our side of the aisle that would like to have the option of being able to participate in other subcommittee hearings. And then also the Chairman Fred Upton bipartisan advantage, I guess, the privilege of bringing those amendments forward. I think it was a great protocol that he started, and I'm really pleased that you have continued it. Thank you.
Thank you. We still call him chairman too, or at least I do. I don't even know if he's listening to me.
He's smiling, yeah.
All right.
And you can keep calling chairman.
All right. All right. All right. So are there is anyone else to be recognized to discuss the rules package? I don't see anybody. Are there any amendments to the rules package? And if anyone wants to make an amendment, you can seek recognition. Use your hand thing again, but I don't think anybody's seeking an amendment, correct? No. Okay. All right. So Without any amendments, hearing none, I move that the resolution to adopt the committee rules be adopted as the rules of the Committee on Energy and Commerce for the 117th Congress. All those in favor say aye.
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 And those,
Aye.
thank you. Those opposed say no.
No.
All right, the ayes appear to have it, and the proposed rules are adopted. The rules adopted by the Committee on Energy and Commerce for the 117th Congress will be published in the Congressional Record and made available to members and the public on the committee's website. Now we move to the resolution to establish subcommittee jurisdictions and ratios. We'll consider the resolution to establish our subcommittee jurisdiction ratios as Committee Rule 8A provides, quote, "The jurisdiction number and size of the subcommittees shall be determined by the majority party caucus." A copy of the resolution was circulated to members in advance. So the clerk will report the chair's resolution to establish the subcommittee jurisdictions and ratios.
A resolution offered by Mr. Pallone, be it resolved by the Committee on Energy and Commerce that the jurisdiction and ratios of the standing subcommittees of the committee for the 117th Congress shall be designated as follows.
Without objection, Madam Clerk, the reading of the resolution is dispensed with, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. I ask the staff to look critically at our subcommittee jurisdiction and to ask the minority staff to do the same. And I want to ensure that our jurisdiction statements capture the full breadth of our jurisdiction and are clear about the subject matter that falls under the committee's jurisdiction. So based on that review, we're proposing a number of changes to the subcommittee jurisdiction, but none of these are intended to move subject matter between subcommittees. Instead, these changes are intended to describe the full breadth of subject matter that is referred to in each subcommittee. So what I want you to understand for all the subcommittee chairs and ranking members, we're not changing the jurisdiction. We're just trying to explain better what it is. We're not moving it around at all. So I don't want anybody to misunderstand. But let me just go through these differences. Under the Subcommittee on Communications and Technology, we added spectrum and federal and commercial spectrum management, as well as internet and interactive computer service liability protections. We also made a technical update to delete the reference to the Office of Emergency Communications, which no longer exists within the Department of Homeland Security, and replace it with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which superseded that office. So that's the Communications and Technology Subcommittee. Next is the Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Commerce. We added cybersecurity and all aspects of its jurisdiction related to the Department of Commerce and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And then with the Subcommittee on Energy, we added energy security and environmental justice as it relates to its reference jurisdiction. With regard to the Subcommittee on Environment and Climate Change, we added the Chemical Safety Board and Environmental Justice as it relates to that jurisdiction of the subcommittee. And finally, to the Subcommittee on Health, we added Emergency Preparedness and Response as it relates to public health and quarantine, the Controlled Substances Act, and the Office of National Drug Control Policy. We also added environmental justice as it relates to health. Now, again, it's not that we're changing anything. It's just that some of these things were not specifically mentioned, but they would fall under the jurisdiction of the subcommittee anyway. But we wanted to put it in there so you know that that's included. But it doesn't really change the jurisdiction. It's just that we're clarifying what these things are. So I think the changes made to the subcommittee jurisdiction statements clarify the topics that fall within the committee's jurisdiction, as well as how the committee's work is undertaken by the subcommittees. So let me just also note that since the full committee ratio changed, we have also added one Republican member to the following subcommittees from the last Congress, difference from the last Congress. So 3 subcommittees: Communications and Technology, Energy and Health. We added another Republican, so their ratios will be 18-4 for communications technology, 19-15 for energy, and 1915 for health. The Consumer Protection and Commerce and Environment and Climate Change subcommittees will both remain at 1410, and Oversight and Investigations will remain at 11 Democrats and 8 Republicans. But now I'd like to recognize the ranking member for any remarks with regard to any of this. Cathy?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you laying out the changes to the jurisdictional statements of the subcommittees. I think this is all moving in the right direction, and the clarity is appreciated. On the ratios, I wasn't planning to say anything, and I know that the ratios were set by the speaker, but I would just maybe highlight for the members that the Republicans believe we should have more members on this committee, and this may become an issue in future years. So thank you for the additional members on the 3 subs, and we'll continue to talk about ratios between our leader and your speaker in future years, future Congresses. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member seek recognition to discuss this resolution related to the jurisdictional statements or the ratios? Anyone else? Bobby? Yes, Mr. Rush is recognized. Bobby, we can't hear you. You gotta unmute again. Bobby, you gotta unmute. I don't know, he can't hear me. Oh, there you go. Oh. Bobby, you gotta unmute.
All right, now, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My mouse is not functioning properly here. But, Mr. Chairman, will you clarify a question that I have? Isn't it your intentions and the intention of these rules that the area of health disparities would be under the jurisdiction of the Subcommittee on Health, and that they will maintain the issue of health disparities, of which I think is going to be a significant subject that we're going to have a lot of discussions on in the 117th Congress. Will you clarify that for me?
So you want to know whether this health disparities falls under the health subcommittee? Was that?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to clarify that for me.
Okay, sure. And I know you're very concerned about a lot of these disparities issues, as many of us are, and we'll certainly address some of the disparities issues, not only on health, but on some of the other energy and other issues as well, a digital divide. All right, anyone else want to talk about this resolution relative to the jurisdiction statements or the ratios? Okay, I don't see anyone. Okay, so the vote now occurs on that resolution. All those in favor will say aye. You have to unmute.
Aye.
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 And all those opposed say no. Okay, the ayes have it, and the resolution is agreed to with regard to the subcommittee jurisdiction and the ratios for the committee. Now we're going to move to the respective Democrat and minority subcommittee announcements, which list the respective chairs, ranking members, and subcommittee member assignments. So on the screen, we've placed the list of the Democratic subcommittee assignments, although I don't see it yet. Okay. So far, What happened to the list is coming? Okay, that's the list of Democratic. Oh, I see. This is the list of Democratic subcommittee assignments. So let me announce who the Democratic caucus has elected to serve as our subcommittee chairs. As you can see, Representative Bobby Rush will chair the subcommittee on energy. Representative Anna Eshoo will chair the subcommittee on health. Representative Diana DeGette will chair the subcommittee on oversight and investigations. Representative Mike Doyle will chair the subcommittee on communications and technology. Representative Jan Schakowsky will chair the subcommittee on consumer protection and commerce. Representative Paul Tonko will chair the subcommittee on environment and climate change. And these have been ratified by our Democratic caucus. So if you, can you switch that now to the Republican list? Okay. And that's the Republican subcommittee assignments. I recognize the ranking member to go over that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very excited to announce the Republican subcommittee rosters, which have been submitted to the committee. And I believe they're going to be displayed here very shortly.
It should be up, Cathy. I can.
Oh, there it is. Yes, I do see it. Thank you. So on health, the ranking member will be Brett Guthrie, Energy, Fred Upton, Communications and Technology, Bob Latta, Consumer Protection and Commerce, Gus Bilirakis, Environment and Climate Change, David McKinley, and Oversight and Investigations, Morgan Griffith. I yield back.
Thank you. So under the Democratic caucus rules, we as a caucus elect a vice chair of the full committee, and then the person is elected actually by, well, it's designated that there is a vice chair by the Democratic caucus, and then we elect someone who has to be, only here so many years to be eligible. So our Democratic committee caucus under Committee Rule 4 elected Representative Kelly, Robin Kelly, as our vice chair. And I'll also be designating subcommittee vice chairs for each of our subcommittees in the future, but that is something that I designate under Committee Rule 4. We don't elect them. And as a point of information, the vice chair of the full committee and the vice chair of any subcommittees would preside at any meeting or hearing during the temporary absence of the chair. So it's Robin for the full committee. The others I haven't designated yet. But before we conclude, I wanted to announce that next Tuesday, February 2nd at 11 a.m., we'll hold our first hearing. We've already sort of mentioned this. It will be an Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee hearing, fully remote, to hear from states about the challenges they face with regard to vaccinations and what the federal government needs to do to support and expand those efforts. I don't have any further business, Cathy, but unless you would like to make some additional remarks, I'm going to move to adjourn.
Let me just say thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are ready to go to work and tackle some of the most important policy debates before the country. And we'll get started next week with these hearings around COVID-19 and the continued commitment to the vaccine and vaccine distribution and a lot of other issues. But thank you. This has been a great meeting, and we're ready to go to work.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being so cooperative. I think that we're really looking forward to a bipartisan effort. Again, I'm going to say this is the best committee. This concludes the order of business for today's
Mr. Chairman,
business. Yes.
I'd like to give some friendly advice to my colleague Neil Dunn. You might want to adjust the angle of your camera. A couple times I looked up And I thought you were Ed Perlmutter. You scared me there. Just little advice.
We don't want that. We don't want anybody to look like Ed. You can tell him I said that. No, I'm being bad. But anyway, thank you, Tony. This concludes the order of business for today's business meeting. Without objection, committee staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes to reflect the action of the committee in adopting the resolution, embodying our rules of procedure and subcommittee jurisdiction and ratios. And if not, without objection, the committee stands adjourned. See you all next week.